Well, hello there, my fellow Chroniclers. Chris here with yet another Post Thoughts, our little podcasty kind of series that we're doing on the side when Chronicles episodes aren't out. We'll be returning to our regular schedule of programming soon, but in the meantime, let's talk about other stuff, like Fire Emblem on the Super Famicom, which is the topic for today's episode. For a while, I thought this was the best episode that I made out of the original 5 that I have a lot of problems with after researching some things. This is the best one. This is the one that I thought was the most well researched, that I really had no problems with, until I researched it some more later on, and I found out that I missed a lot. Well, for starters, I didn't really miss that much on Mystery of the Emblem and Thracia. There's only a few things on Mystery of the Emblem. It's a remake. They didn't really have much about it. Like how Shadow Dragon and New Mystery of the Emblem exist as two different entities, as two different games. That was planned to be the original intent for Mystery of the Emblem. They were going to originally have two different games, one for Shadow Dragon, one for Mystery of the Emblem, They were going to have that, but then they changed their mind and thought it would be better to just throw it all into one complete package. That's why stuff is missing from Mystery of the Emblem, and that's probably why they eventually did Shadow Dragon and New Mystery of the Emblem on the DS. And that's really it. It was supposed to be the last game on Arcania. Or Arcania? I don't know, some things have changed after Fire Emblem Heroes. All the pronunciations and correct names for everything in English are coming out, and maybe it's changed, I don't know. But that is really all I can say about Mystery of the Emblem. There is a little bit of a bonus fact that I could throw in about the Fire Emblem anime. The OVA sold terribly in Japan. Yeah, no one really wanted a Fire Emblem anime. It was going to be a 25 episode series or something like that, the standard of the day. But the OVA flopped terribly, and so we never got our full-length anime for the original Fire Emblem. Yes, that canceled the series for that. But, interestingly enough, the voice actor for the series, Hikaru Midorikawa. Yeah, Hikaru Midorikawa. The voice actor for Marth, or Prince Mars in English for some reason. He became the voice of Marth in Super Smash Bros. Yes, the Japanese Marth that we've always known in Smash Bros. Is Hikaru Midorikawa. He's voiced it for all these years, so a little interesting thing to know. And then let's talk about Thracia. So Thracia was the shortest development cycle for a Fire Emblem title. Actually, I thought it was Blazing Sword, but it's Thracia. It was going to be even shorter, but they wanted to keep improving on it and improving on it. It's kind of like how the story behind Echoes, Fire Emblem Echoes, they wanted to keep building and make it a better game, so it became bigger, and the development cycle just kept increasing. And they also ran into a bunch of difficulties actually trying to keep the canonicity of Thracia intact, because it takes place between Act 1 and Act 2 of Genealogy: The Holy War, so they couldn't do some things, they couldn't kill some characters, they had to keep some people alive. And lastly, Kaga was kind of sad about how Genealogy: The Holy War turned out, because they focused heavily on the narrative with Genealogy more so than any other Fire Emblem game, and it kind of lacked in gameplay, according to him, even though it made the weapon triangle system, which defined Fire Emblem for over a decade, or 2 decades, maybe. It defined Fire Emblem for a long time, up until Echoes now. He was disappointed in that, so he switched the focus over to gameplay. That's why Thracia is the most difficult Fire Emblem of all time, because he wanted to focus on gameplay. So gameplay over narrative, that's Thracia's case. So if you like that game's gameplay, thank Kaga, because that's the reason why it's so difficult and so good to some, or just impossible to people like me who can barely play Fire Emblem on any setting higher than normal. Yeah, that's me. But anyway, let's talk about what we really came here to talk about. The genealogy of the Holy War. Because this is the main reason why I'm disappointed now in the Super Famicom episode, even though it's my third favorite behind Fates in Awakening. The development cycle for Genealogy of the Holy War was hell, to put it lightly. They were in the process of transitioning between studios at the time. For some goddamn reason, they thought it was fantastic that they should just move between studios, that nothing would impact them in that regard. Also, they were put under a severe time constraint between projects. Mystery of the Emblem came out in 1994. Genealogy of the Holy War came out in 1996. They had to make the entirety of Genealogy of the Holy War in 2 years. And that game is massive. Its maps are ginormous. And everything is just so grand and epic. That was one of the main themes they wanted to do. Make the world epic. That and some other things contributed to some very bad times for the development crew behind it. And also reveals Kaga's true nature. Kaga is a perfectionist. He wants the best out of everyone. He wants perfection, utter perfection from his coworkers and teammates. The first example of that is Katsuyoshi Koya. Katsuyoshi Koya was the character designer for Mystery of the Emblem. Kaga brought him on for that, and he did a fantastic job in Kaga's eyes. However, with the severe time constraints, Koya had a lot of problems. He wasn't able to get to the same quality that Mystery of the Emblem had, and Kaga was not happy. He was completely unsatisfied and rejected his drawings outright. And so he replaced him with Mayumi Hirota, another character designer at Intelligent Systems. And he praised her work. He loved what she did with the game, and so that is why the character design for Genealogy of the Holy War looks the way it does. And Koya's work was thrown out entirely, and because of this and a lot of things that were going on at Nintendo at the time, he left the company completely and has never worked with Nintendo since. So I can tell you a little bit about what the perfectionist vision that Kaga had in mind for Genealogy of the Holy War can do to people. It made the game better for it, but you kind of gotta think about the actual people you're working with sometimes. Or I guess the art is more important than the person. I don't know. It's a little bit of a morally gray area. Did you know that the love system, and in turn the support system that was innovated on because of the love system, did you know that the love system is actually meant to be about pedigree racehorse breeding? That's what Kaga originally interpreted that as his system. He thought of competitive racehorse breeding because you're trying to breed the best warrior out of all the combinations that you could possibly do. Yeah. That brings to light a different aspect of the support system and may make you think twice about what you're doing when you're doing supports from now on in Fates and Awakening with all the children. Oh, and you might want to know, it took an entire year just to design the romance system. Just that, and nothing else. Yeah, it's surprising that Genealogy of the Holy War is a working, playable game, let alone a masterpiece. And if it was meant to be a reward, yeah. It's like, with certain character pairings. It's meant to be like a reward for players for figuring out the right combos with people. It's not like it sounds like kind of that Kaga didn't feel that his characters were human beings. Even though he made Fire Emblem to begin with because he wanted characters in strategy games to have the personality of RPG characters. Speaking of RPGs, let's talk about what the original vision for Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War was meant to be. Originally, it was not even a Fire Emblem game. Kaga kept adding on so many role-playing elements that at times it felt like it was going to just be a complete role-playing game akin to Echoes. Even more so than that. But people kept making him scale it down, and we eventually got the strategy intense gameplay of Genealogy of the Holy War. It was originally going to be called Holy Sword Emblem Kaiser. Say that 3 times fast. Because it was so different, they thought, hey, that's a good name. But the name was way too big and way too confusing that the Super Famicom couldn't hold the name. The name couldn't work with the Super Famicom for some reason. So they had to drop the name. And then eventually it turned into Sword Emblem. And then as the game went on and the weapon triangle and other things were implemented, it became Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. Or well, originally it was Fire Emblem Inheritors of Light. That's why Chapter 6 of the game is called Inheritors of Light, or the Light Inheritors. But Genealogy of the Holy War made more sense with the epic scope of the game. Other little tidbits about like what the original Genealogy of the Holy War was meant to be. The gameplay had more in common with a traditional Japanese role-playing game and was based around squads, where the player could move squads of 10 characters around a map and would encounter and battle enemies. So, in actuality, it was more of a strategy game. It was going slowly towards the Famicom Wars aspect of the experience that started Fire Emblem. But as development continued, the game shifted back to a traditional Fire Emblem title, and that was based on both feedback from Nintendo and everyone's opinion on the team. Everyone generally thought it would be better to make another Fire Emblem game instead of something completely different. So we could have had a brand new Nintendo franchise that is somewhere in between Famicom Wars and Fire Emblem. Hopefully someone will do something. But yes, so Holy Sword Emblem Kaiser could have been a game that we could have played. How about we talk about the story next? The story for Genealogy of the Holy War was interesting. Originally it was meant to be a 3-act structure of sorts, with the first act, of course, being about the adults and Sigurd, and then the second act being in between the second and third acts, or the first and third acts, and covering the time period between each, and then the third act being about the children led by Seliph. Yeah, it was supposed to be like that. Due to time constraints, that of course didn't happen, and we were left with a missing act. And at first of these 3 acts, it was mostly supposed to be focused on the character, Sigurd and his crew and Seliph and his crew. However, as time went on, Kaga felt that it was better that they focus on the world of Yggdrasil and instead show the scale of a conflict and make it seem like history in the making. The main theme was supposed to be about the stupidity. The main theme was about how the stupidity of humanity could forge history. And as you know, the lines between good and evil are kind of blurred, with the descendants of the 12 Crusaders being on opposed sides. Kaga did not want to create a storyline focused on poetic justice or morality. Instead, he wanted to aim for a more realistic scenario, a more realistic sense of the world and how things went. That not everything went as you wanted to. Not everything was just good versus evil. There's not always a clear-cut bad guy. That is why Genealogy of the Holy War is so different from any other Fire Emblem title. And this is why there are elements of realism that are kind of a little bit disgusting, like patricide and incest, because they occurred in medieval history and made sense for the world. So if you didn't know Genealogy of the Holy War was like that, yeah, it is. It's disgusting, but it makes sense narratively. And it's kind of in line with Game of Thrones. Like, Genealogy of the Holy War is Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones in video game form, essentially. But that is all I have for you today. Looking back on all this, it seems that while Kaga was tough on everyone, while Kaga's perfectionist vision might have caused some people to lose their entire jobs and delayed the game and did a lot of things to a lot of people, in the end, it resulted in a fantastic, epic masterpiece that is one of the greatest video games ever made. It wouldn't have happened if Kaga had pushed his team to the breaking point. So, while there are some games I cover where the bosses and upper management are ruthless and evil and destroy games and all that jazz, this one, Kaga, is not the nicest person to be around with. I've never heard a word spoken by him. I have no idea who the man is. And I don't know if this is really who he is. I am only grasping at straws here from what I learned from interviews and Wikipedia and all these other things I find. I'm only grasping at straws here because I don't understand Japanese. That's who I feel Kaga is. Kaga is a perfectionist through and through. He is not your friend. He is not your buddy. He wants to make one of the best games of all time, and he's gonna make you work your ass off to do it. And you're probably gonna do it, unless you aren't backed by Nintendo. Which is why Visteria Saga and all of his work is in relative obscurity, and no one knew who the hell he was until I talked about him in Fire Emblem Famicom. And thankfully, some kind individual, I can't remember his name, uploaded a picture of Shozo Kaga from back in the day. And without that one picture, without the article on Schmiplations, I don't know how to spell this translation site right. If that one article on Schmiplations or whatever, if those two things never happened, I'd never know what he looks like, let alone who he is. And that is the greatest travesty of Fire Emblem A Tactful history that I've made so far. I never explored Kaga as a man, as a person. And if one day, hopefully, I can return to this series and give every single game its just desserts and its own individual episode, then hopefully I can shed some light on who Kaga actually is. And we can all respect him or hate him for it, however you feel. But anyway, that's it for me. If you are interested in supporting this channel, then you can click the Patreon logo in the description or in the cards or at the end slate and go check out our Patreon and get some cool perks while you support the channel. Or you can just have a nice day or like subscribe, I don't know, whatever you want to do. Anyways, just continue that thirst for knowledge, dear viewer.